The tiles in our hallway were always ice cold. I used to think that was just the house settling. But later, I learned that coldness can seep into everything, even people. My name is Mara Lindley, and if you're listening, I need you to know something up front. I wasn't born a fighter. I was shaped into one. It started slow, like all storms do. My mom passed when I was 9. And within a year, my dad remarried a woman named Judith. She wore grief like a costume, black pearls, crocodile tears, and a smile that always knew more than it let on. Judith had a daughter, Kaya. 2 years younger than me, but twice as loud. She had those soft curls you see in shampoo ads, and the kind of eyes that looked innocent even when they were watching you burn. By the time I was 12, the house didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like a performance. Kaya was the princess. I was the help. Judith had this phrase she'd use, usually in front of guests: "Mara's good with her hands. She's our little house whisperer." And I'd laugh on cue while holding a tray of hors d'oeuvres I didn't get to eat. I learned how to make myself small, quiet footsteps, soft answers, no eye contact at dinner. But small doesn't mean stupid. Kaya didn't just wear my clothes without asking, she erased me in every way she could. She took my piano lessons, then bragged about her natural talent. She opened my birthday gifts, then said, "Oh, I thought these were for me." And my father? He watched it all. With a kind of indifference that cuts deeper than rage. If he noticed, he never said. And if he spoke, it was always to correct me. "Don't be so sensitive, Mara. Kaya's younger. Let her shine." So I dimmed myself. I cooked. I cleaned. I never complained. Until the night I did. It was Kaya's 18th birthday. Judith threw this absurd garden party, white roses, string lights, and champagne towers. I had to hand out the glasses. In heels that didn't fit. Wearing a dress Kaya picked for me, a size too small. Someone asked if I was the hired help. Judith laughed and said, "She's just part of the furniture." I still remember how the guests laughed with her. Polished teeth, empty eyes. Later that night, Kaya ordered me to wash her feet. She said her heels hurt, and I owed her after scuffing hers during setup. I said no. It wasn't loud. Just firm. No. The silence that followed was louder than any scream. Judith slapped me first. My father watched, arms crossed. When I turned to him, blood in my mouth, disbelief in my eyes, he said, "Maybe now you'll learn some respect." Then came the kick. To my ribs. Then another. I didn't cry. Not then. Not when I crawled to the guest house in the back, locked the door, and curled up on the floor. Every breath felt like glass. Every blink stung. I waited until 3 a.m. Then I left. No shoes. No phone. Just a hoodie, a photo of my mom, and the echo of Judith's voice. "This is why no one wanted you." I disappeared. No police report. No viral TikTok confession. Just vanished into the kind of silence that either breaks you or builds you. For a long time, I didn't know which one it would be. I worked 3 jobs, waitressing, night janitor, and even scrubbing fish at a dock in Tacoma. Anything that let me stay invisible. But here's the thing about silence. It's not emptiness. It's potential. One morning on my 21st birthday, I got a letter. A dusty beige envelope with a wax seal. Inside, a trust left by my real mom. But it wasn't just money. It was instructions. Conditions I'd have to meet to unlock it fully: self-sufficiency, sobriety, proof of stability. And a note in my mom's handwriting: "When the world forgets who you are, remember who you were born to be." It took 2 more years. Therapy. Legal classes. Sleepless nights. But I met every requirement. And with that trust, I didn't just buy a future. I bought leverage. The first thing I bought wasn't a car. It was debt. Judith and Kaya had always lived big: Italian marble counters, designer bags, a new car every other year, but most of it was smoke and mirrors. Loans. Refinancing. High-interest payments dressed up as lifestyle. So, I did what they never thought I could. I started buying their unpaid balances quietly. In pieces. The credit union that held their second mortgage? I bought the loan portfolio. A debt collection agency that handled their overdue renovations? Acquired. A private lender that carried their silent lien? Transferred to a trust, my trust. Brick by brick, I bought the walls they'd once locked me behind. All under a different name, Elena Marlowe. My legal alias, established through my mother's estate. The girl they kicked out? She no longer existed on paper. But oh, she was very much alive. It took 2 years. 2 years of strategic silence, ghosting calls from the one cousin who still asked where I was, and pretending not to notice when Judith posted Instagram reels with the caption, "Grateful to be blessed with a real daughter." 2 years of Kaya pretending to be a women's rights advocate online, while privately demeaning people, calling them low-class and damaged. 2 years of watching their image rise, while I built a platform of my own. You see, when you grow up being told you're invisible, your greatest weapon is visibility. So I began speaking. Quietly at first, through blogs, under pseudonyms. I wrote about abuse without naming it. I wrote about gaslighting, financial control, and physical discipline masked as love. And people responded. One post went viral. Then another. A podcast invited me to speak under a voice filter. Then a book agent reached out. But I still hadn't spoken my name. Because I wasn't done building. The moment I knew I was ready came unexpectedly on a Tuesday morning while I was making tea. A notification popped up. Property tax lien filed on 431 Runwood Lane. Their house. My childhood prison. It was falling behind on taxes. The timing was perfect. I contacted the city. Paid the taxes outright. Then triggered a clause from one of the secondary liens I'd acquired. Default property seizure. 3 days later, the deed was mine. Legally. Publicly. And on the 7th anniversary of the night they broke my ribs, I returned. I didn't knock. I walked straight through the front door at 11:52 a.m. midweek when I knew Kaya would be filming her day in the life vlog and Judith would be arranging her faux peonies for a real estate walkthrough. Judith dropped the vase when she saw me. Kaya gasped. "Mara? What are you?" I smiled. "It's Elena now. And I'm not here to fight. I'm just here to walk through my property." Judith's face contorted like she'd tasted vinegar. "You're trespassing." "No, I'm not." I pulled a manila envelope from my bag and laid it flat on the kitchen island. "You're living here illegally. I own this house. And I'm giving you 48 hours to leave." Silence. You could hear the neighbors' wind chimes through the open windows. Kaya laughed. "You're bluffing. You couldn't even afford shoes when you left." I met her eyes. "No, Kaya. I couldn't afford to lose myself again." That's what I walked out without. I gave them 2 days. Not out of mercy, but out of poetry. 48 hours to pack every illusion they'd ever built and sit with the truth that the girl they called just useful now held the deed to their delusions. The news broke that night. A photo of me in front of the house, holding the deed. Caption: "Not every home is safe. Some prisons have wallpaper and family portraits." Within hours, the post spread across every corner of the internet. Reddit threads. Instagram reels. TikTok edits using audio from my old podcast interviews. Hashtags exploded. Hashtag she bought the house. Hashtag silent no more. Hashtag this is what healing looks like. By morning, Judith had turned off her comments. By afternoon, Kaya had lost a brand deal. By nightfall, my inbox overflowed with messages from strangers. "Thank you for saying what I couldn't." I thought I was the only one. But this story wasn't just about me anymore. It was about everyone who had ever been silenced in their own living room. When the movers came 2 days later, Kaya screamed into her phone for someone to call their lawyer. Judith begged me to be the bigger person. My father, who hadn't spoken to me in nearly 6 years, just stared blankly from the stairs. He said, "Mara, we raised you." I looked him in the eye. "No. You crushed me. And you thought I'd stay under your heel." Then I turned to the front door and walked out with the same quiet resolve I'd left with, except this time, I wasn't crawling. I was carrying the weight of every girl who'd ever been told to be quiet, to be grateful, to be obedient. The thing about public shame is, it echoes louder in people who built their image on lies. Within 48 hours, Judith's real estate agency suspended her license. Clients pulled out, citing ethical concerns. Kaya's brand partnerships went quiet. Her face, once framed in sponsored skincare ads, was now being dissected in YouTube comment sections. Isn't she the girl whose sister exposed the family? Even my father, silent, invisible, always conveniently neutral, wasn't spared. His employer launched an internal review. A leaked HR email said, "We do not condone any form of abuse, past or present." And still, I didn't speak their names. Not once. I never called them out directly, never posted a video sobbing into a camera. I didn't need to. My silence had become something else entirely, a mirror. And when people looked into it, they saw the reflection of everything they tried to hide. The media wanted sound bites. Podcasters, reporters, and local news anchors, they all wanted to turn me into a moment. Tell us what happened. Tell us how it felt. But I didn't want to be a headline. I wanted to be a warning. So I did what felt most true. I returned to the place where my healing had first begun, a women's center called the Fern Room, hidden on a quiet block behind an old church. It was there, 2 years after I left home, that I showed up bleeding and silent. And it was there that a woman named Naomi looked at me and didn't flinch. She didn't ask, "What did you do to make them so angry?" She said, "What do you want your life to look like?" She gave me a room, a notebook, a warm blanket, and the first voice I ever heard that didn't sound like control. I returned with a deed in my bag and a donation slip in my hand. A 6-figure check. Anonymous on paper, but not in heart. Naomi hugged me like I hadn't been gone for years. She looked at the house deed and said, "What now?" I said, "I don't want to destroy them. I want to make sure they never get to destroy anyone else." That's when we started the program House to Haven, a project that helps young women transition from domestic trauma into permanent, self-owned housing. No landlords. No manipulation. Just keys and peace. I began speaking, not about them, but about us. The unseen girls. The house ghosts. The ones who flinch when someone says, "family dinner." My first talk was on a folding chair in a shelter cafeteria. My second was in a high school gym. My third was on a TEDx stage. I wore jeans and sneakers. No makeup. Just my mother's necklace, the one they gave away, and I reclaimed not through theft, but through fate. I looked straight into the camera and spoke not to the audience, but to the girl I used to be, the one who curled up on cold tile floors and learned to breathe through bruises. I said, "If no one's ever told you this, being treated like nothing doesn't mean you are." People cried. But I didn't pause for applause. Because I knew somewhere out there, they were watching. And I wanted them to see what it looks like when the girl you buried becomes the storm. The next morning, I received an envelope. No return address. Just shaky handwriting that read, "Please read." Inside were court documents. A cease and desist order filed by Judith and Kaya, claiming defamation, emotional harm, and loss of reputation. I laughed. A dry, steady kind of laugh. The kind that comes when you've already buried the fear they're trying to revive. Because when someone breaks your ribs and your voice in the same house, they don't get to hand you paperwork and ask for peace. I called my attorney, the same one who'd helped Naomi build the shelter's legal shield. He chuckled when he read the letter. "They just poked the bear," he said. He filed a counterclaim, abuse documentation archive. Photos. Medical reports. Journal entries. A voice memo I'd kept from that night where Judith said, "You're lucky we feed you." At the hearing, the judge didn't take long. She looked at them, sitting in courtroom makeup and fake humility, and said, "Do you understand the difference between being exposed and being held accountable?" The case was dismissed with prejudice. Outside, cameras waited. Microphones angled. "Do you have a statement?" they asked. I held up a printed photo, me, standing in front of the Fern Room, arms crossed, smiling. I said, "This is my response. No names. No vengeance. Just proof." And I walked away. After the court case, I stopped checking the hashtags. The interviews still came, the podcasts, and the profile features. But I only said yes to one, a handwritten letter from a college student majoring in trauma studies who said, "Your words saved my sister." That was enough. But one night, as I was organizing files for the shelter's expansion grant, I got a call. No name. No caller ID. I should have let it ring. But some part of me, A part one thought I'd buried, pressed accept. Mara? The voice cracked. It's Dad. I didn't respond. He filled the silence, as cowards often do. People don't even look me in the eye anymore. Your story, your version, destroyed my life. What do you want from me? I let the quiet settle, let it steep. Then I said, softly but without pity, I wanted a father. And then I hung up. No monologue. No closure speech. Because some ghosts don't deserve eulogies. A week later, another box arrived at my office. Plain. No logo. No name. Inside was a manila folder. Court filings, Judith and Kaya, Chapter 7 bankruptcy. Attached was a note from their new attorney, claiming the TED Talk had impacted their income, careers, and public standing. I smiled. Not because I was happy they had fallen, but because it finally made sense. They weren't destroyed by me. They were destroyed by their own actions. Their own shadows. Their own legacy. All I did was hold up a mirror. I never opened the final notice that confirmed the sale of their home. I just watched from the shelter's rooftop as movers carried out boxes of designer shame and inherited cruelty. The house was bought by a quiet couple who'd spent a decade saving. They didn't know its history. They only knew it had good bones. They didn't need to know about the girl who once bled on the tiles. They were building a future. So was I. Weeks later, I stood inside the Fern Room's new wing. We'd painted the walls in soft cream and warm sage. It smelled like lavender oil and dried eucalyptus. Healing had a scent. A rhythm. A place. That's when I met Eva. She was 14. Thin shoulders, eyes too dark for her age, and a jaw that tensed every time someone moved too fast. She didn't talk for 3 days. Then one night, while we were painting a quote wall together, she whispered, "Does it ever stop hurting?" I didn't lie. I said no. But it becomes fuel. She nodded. We kept painting. Word by word. Color by color. By the end of the week, she asked if she could help teach the next girl how to hold a paintbrush. That's when I knew. I'd won. Not because they were gone. Not because the world finally knew what they'd done. But because I was no longer trying to prove I existed. I was in existence. That night, I packed a small box. Inside, a photo of me at 11, holding a library book with a sleeve pulled too far down. A faded ER report. A worn-out journal page with my mom's handwriting, "You are not invisible." I mailed it to a P.O. box I knew they still checked. No note. No sender name. Just the return address of the Fern Room. Because shame doesn't need a spotlight, it lives in the corners of unopened envelopes. They called what I did revenge. But it wasn't. It was a reclamation. Of breath. Of silence. Of power. And somewhere, in a tiny apartment that smells like faded perfume and regret, my stepmother opened that box and met the ghost she created. But I was too busy building futures to care if they finally understood the past.